Imagine landing a massive consulting contract worth hundreds of thousands of dollars only to issue apologies, revise your work, and hand back part of the payment because AI hallucinations slipped into your report. That's exactly what happened to one of the big consulting firms in the world, Deloitte, not once but twice in 2025. First, it happened in Australia. They had a $300,000 USD report that they had to send to the government. That was their client. And the report was riddled with fabricated references and fake court quotes, classic AI errors. Deloitte had to partially refund the fee, and they had to add an AI disclosure to their reports. Then just months later in Canada, $1.1 million contract for a healthcare initiative in the government. Again, errors pointed to AI, fabricated quotes, fabricated links. Deloitte had invested billions of dollars into AI, and they promised oversight. So what went wrong? Well, the interesting thing here, it's not so much that people don't like AI. Everybody knows it can increase your productivity. But rather, it's the psychology behind how we see people and companies that use AI. It turns out, according to fresh research, that AI, even though it has productivity benefits, it also has reputational costs. And that's what we'll talk about today. We'll talk about how to use AI in a way that not only increases your productivity, but also boosts your reputation. So stick around. Okay, so let's break down these couple of scandals because they're a wake-up call for anyone using AI professionally. So in the summer of 2025, Deloitte Australia delivered a 250-page report to the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations. The costs to the government and the taxpayers were about $300,000 USD. The report reviewed a bunch of systems for welfare compliance, but as soon as it was submitted, a university researcher spotted around 20 errors that included fake academic papers, invented quotes, and hallucinations. Deloitte had to revise the report, disclose AI use, and refund part of the fee. Now, the core findings stood, and there were not that many errors for a 250-page report, but the public embarrassment was massive. Now, fast forward a few months, and Deloitte Canada this time submits a 500-page report on healthcare planning. That report was worth $1.1 million USD that Canadian taxpayers had to pay, and it had the same issues: fake citations, non-existent papers, work that was attributed to real researchers but who never did that work. Deloitte insisted that AI was used only selectively to improve productivity, to summarize things, to analyze the data. But the public perception of Deloitte took a hit with calls for refunds. And the sad thing was, Deloitte actually pushed AI in its own company to the tune of $3 billion. They invested $3 billion in their own AI capability. They have internal tools, and they have human-in-the-loop policies, and they have AI platform. But these cases show that AI errors in high-stakes work can lead to massive backlash, especially in government clients. Now, this is interesting, as I said, because we all see the productivity gains that we can get from AI. So why does Deloitte have to suffer reputational costs for using what is considered to be the greatest productivity tool ever to exist? Okay, so let's get to the research. A recent paper published in 2025 tested thousands of people, and they tried to understand how people evaluate others who use AI versus others who don't use AI. So what they found was that workers who used generative AI to do their work, like ChatGPT, were seen as lazier, less competent, less diligent, and more replaceable compared to workers who didn't use AI tools at all. Moreover, AI use is something that people tend to hide from their managers or coworkers precisely for that fearing that other people will see them as investing less effort and being less motivated to do their work. And it is kind of funny because AI is such a tool for productivity. It's so good for many things, not for everything, but for many things, that you would think that people would be happy that you are using it. But the thing is, in our minds, AI feels like a crutch, like something that we're using because we can't do the job or we don't want to do the job. And we have to combat that inference because we want the productivity gains, but we don't want the reputational costs. That mirrors what happened with Deloitte. Many saw Deloitte consultants as lazy for leaning on AI, even if it was meant to boost productivity and efficiency and accuracy. So let's try to understand the nuances behind these findings, because there were several nuances in recent research papers about using AI. First, the penalty for using AI in people's minds shrinks or vanishes if your boss or your colleagues are also using AI. In other words, experienced users of AI expect others to use it too, and they see using AI positively. Secondly, it's task dependent. When AI clearly fits, such as for things like brainstorming or summarizing data, then people are less harsh when you use AI. Third, if you disclose, if you say to people, I'm using AI for this, that mitigates the problem. It doesn't eliminate it, but it mitigates the problem of people seeing you as less willing to invest effort. Fourth, we have to remember that this is not unique to AI as a technology. If you work in a toxic or suboptimal work culture, then unfortunately any help that you ask for will be seen as weakness. So when you ask for help, quote unquote, from AI, that's also negative. So this is a culture problem, not an AI problem. Finally, it's important to remember that any new technology, AI or not AI, always faces resistance in the beginning. So Plato, from thousands of years ago, in one of his books, criticized using writing as a crutch for memory. He thought that remembering things is better than writing them down because it shows that you have a good memory. And he doubted that anybody who used writing to remember things could ever achieve true wisdom. Now, of course, today writing is a signal of intelligence. If you're a good writer, then you're very intelligent. But thousands of years ago, it was a signal for being stupid, for not being able to remember things. So it's safe to say that as AI become more universal, the stigma against it will likely fade. Until then, though, we have to think about how to counteract that stigma. Okay, so what are best practices for using AI and communicating that you're using AI to other people? Okay, so first, you have to know your audience and your culture. If you're in an AI savvy team, if you're a team of early adopters, then you can use it freely, and in fact, you should advertise that you're using it. Otherwise, you'll be falling behind. However, in more traditional settings where people have not used AI, or they make fun of it, or they're not sure if it's good, or they think it might rule the world one day, you have to be a little bit more cautious. Second, don't hide AI use, but rather disclose it strategically. The worst thing that can happen is if you use AI and it's exposed, people didn't know about it ahead of time, then it doesn't matter if your work is great. This is exactly what happened to Deloitte. If you're exposed, then people just assume that you're suspicious. But if you disclose ahead of time, then people assume that you're trustworthy. Third, remember that certain judgments and certain decisions should never be done with AI. Reserve human judgment and authenticity for high-stakes interactions. So it's fine if you have routine emails that you use AI to draft, for example, finding leads in a sales situation or sending template emails to a lot of people. But if you have personal texts, or if you have emails to mentors or your boss, you should not use AI for that. You should always do it yourself to show respect and to show authenticity. Fourth, if you're leading a team, normalize what is considered good AI use versus bad AI use. Be very clear with your guidelines, okay? So you can say things like AI is okay and encouraged for initial research, but not for client communications. It's very, very important that you're very, very upfront with your team as opposed to have AI use grow and grow under the radar. Then people would feel ashamed about it, they would hide it, and you wouldn't know exactly as a leader how AI is creeping into your work. You want to get ahead of it to know what's going on with the work product. Next, make sure to give your people feedback that is relevant to how they use AI. In other words, whereas in the past you might give them feedback about their writing or about their analysis and so on, now you have to give them feedback about what prompt to use for AI, or which AI assistant to use, or what parts of the task should be used with AI versus not. This is a different element of the feedback that you have to give them that they expect from you now that AI is in the picture. And finally, always verify the output, the final work product. Fact check, citations, quotes, data, it's worth it. Having a human in the loop really, really saves you from embarrassing moments while also preserving the productivity of letting AI do the initial work. So overall, AI is definitely here to stay, and these Deloitte cases are lessons for us. Just because a new technology is on average better than the old technology does not mean that our brains see it that way, at least not initially. So Deloitte inadvertently pushed boundaries too fast without enough safeguards. My take, it probably, let's say, was not laziness on the part of Deloitte. It was probably over-optimism about how people would view its AI use. and it was carelessness in disclosing versus not disclosing AI use in the first place. So for you, if you follow these steps, you can preserve your reputation, even boost it, while also gaining the productivity that AI can give you. So I hope this was helpful. Like and subscribe if you like this content, and I'll see you next time.